My talk today is going to be on the introduction. Well, it's going to be an introduction on the Wwise 301 certification course. This is a course that is offered by Audio Kinetic. I know that some of you have seen some of these other talks, from Brock and Simon. And I want to again stress the fact that everything that we see is online. It took me a couple weeks to get through the 301. And so obviously I'm just going to skim the top and brush over things and give you guys an idea of how easy it really is to do integration. So it's all about the Wwise Unity integration, and this certification is all about empowering the composer and the sound designer to actually do all the integration as well. So I know there's a ton of composers here that are looking for work. I'm in the education field. I'm looking for internships for my students all the time, and so we're constantly networking, LinkedIn, looking for different openings and so on. And what Simon, myself, Brock, we've all realized is what these big game companies are looking for is they're looking for composers and sound designers that can implement as well. Not just, oh, I made a great song, here, hire me, and here's my song. It's like, no, we need somebody to integrate the music. We need somebody to integrate the sound effects and so on. And that's what the 301 cert's all about. Being able to take a game, integrate, add all the sounds to different hooks and triggers, and basically anything that you could get your hands on that's active within Unity to add sounds to, and without any help from the coders. So let's get out of this screen. We can just close this. So, you guys, I have a game here, and it is, okay, so the proof in the pudding, I guess. The 301 certification is built around a game called WAG, the Wwise Adventure Game. It's a third-person shooter, and went through this and was able to do great. But when I was done, I kind of took a step back, and this session has custom drop-down menus specific for the certification, and it was a very controlled, nurturing environment. And I wanted to know if I could do it for real. So what I did is I got Unity, hit the asset store, and found a pre-made game kit. It's the 2D game kit. So it's kind of popular right now, and it's so people can create their own levels that know nothing about video games at all. So it's a pre-made game. All the audio was there, everything was there, and I integrated Wwise into this video game, turned off the Unity engine, all the audio's gone, and then integrated everything myself. And I'm going to show you guys the entire process. So we have the Wwise launcher, and the Wwise launcher, when this first was released, I was kind of confused at first. I'm like, so there's an application to launch an application. It seemed like it was from the Department of Redundancy department. And, but then I figured out what an amazing tool the launcher is. So not only does it have a fantastic community support, I am not online, sorry. There would be, there's blogs and talks and max attacks and all kinds of really cool stuff. There's the Wwise wizards and witches and forums and everything. Then it's your project manager, and not just a project manager, but a project manager that handles all of your licensing. It'll handle as well as every version of Wwise that you may have installed. So right now I only have 2019, but on my home system, I have 2016, that's what I developed Alien Tap Attack with. We have 2017, that's what Disco Drop. We have 2018, that's our new title. 2019 is the newest version, and I also have 2020 beta that I'm testing for Simon and so on. So it'll manage every version of the software, as well as all of your sessions. It manages all of your plugins, everything that you have installed. But this is the big one. This is the really big one for me. Well, before that, I'm sorry, samples. We have what's called the Wwise Adventure Game. And this is the game, the WAG, this is the game that was built for the 301 certification. And again, it's custom, and it seemed like a very nurturing, very secure environment, that it was, yeah, kind of grabbed you by the hand and walked you down the path. And I needed to see if I could do this for real on my own. So, and there's other sandboxes and games that you can tear apart and build levels. This one was built with Unreal for virtual reality and spatialization. So when we were developing our first game, Alien Tap Attack, it was Wwise and Unity, and the launcher did not exist. So I had a plug-in. I found myself online on forums. I'm stealing, just taking little snippets of code and scripts from other people. And it was a process to where when I finally created an event in Wwise and it showed up in Unity, it was one of those moments where you're kind of running up and down the hallway. It took a day, maybe two, to get this figured out. And now it is as easy as, and this is the juice, you guys. We have this Unity tab and we have an Unreal tab. I don't have any Unreal sessions in here right now. I do at the house. But this Unity tab here, all you have to do now is create a session in Unity, name it, close the session, launch the launcher, and the launcher says, hey, I see you have a Unity in session. Would you like me to integrate Wwise for you? Heck yeah, and now it's just a darn button and it does everything for you. And so that's the first step. I wanted to show you, I'm going to get rid of the launcher now because I already have the session up. I do. So this is what we would see in a brand new session after we integrated Wwise. So in a brand new session, you have your sample scene and all you have is a camera. In the one scene folder. After the integration, what the integration does is, first of all, Wwise integration will add a Wwise global game object to every one of the scenes. And that object actually has, as you can see I have it selected, it actually has the Wwise initializer. And that's what's going to turn on the Wwise engine when that scene loads. Does this make sense? Cool, so that turns on the engine for us. So now every scene will have this Wwise global with the initializer to turn on the engine. The next thing is now we have, I'm not going into it, but basically streaming assets, and we have all of the information for the integration. That's where our sound banks are and the integration information. So the two engines can talk to each other. The next thing is we have what's called the Wwise Picker. And this is really cool. This will show you the actual hierarchy that you have in Wwise. So is when I create events in Wwise, create sound banks, they will actually show up here in Unity. And that was that moment where I was running up and down the hallway hooting. Okay, so we're going to get rid of this one. And now here is the session to start. And so as you can see, every one of these scenes has a Wwise global on it. And so let's talk about what we need to do. So the integration's done. And now we need to start adding sounds. So I'm going to hit play. And it should be just the start screen, hopefully. Start, yeah, good. Looks okay. What would we normally expect to hear right now? At the very least.
Music.
Background music. Yes. Yeah, background music. Okay, and then UI for clicking buttons. And so let's keep it very simple. So music, let's do that right now. Which will lead to the next thing that is added to the Unity session during the integration. And there is, so I have the Wwise global for the start scene. There is the initializer. There's the initializer. The next thing is during or after the integration, now we have we have a complete menu of different custom-made AK scripts for events, objects, switches, states, listeners, and so on. Ooh, that's a big one that you should, if you're interested, you should take a note of, because that kind of got me for a second. When you first create it, yes, the Wwise Global, it will create the initializer on the very first scene. And what it'll do is it will add, the initializer on the first scene. And if I can make it over here to the camera, it will also add a listener. And so we know that we have emitters and listeners. And if there is no listener on a camera or some type of object in that game, you're not going to hear anything. Is everybody with me? So it only adds a listener to the very first scene just on the camera. And so for the rest of the scenes, you have to make sure you put your listener on there or you're not going to hear anything when you switch. So we have our menu. Let's see, that's the main camera. And the listener's already there. We have our main menu. So now we understand that Wwise works by way of sound banks. Is everybody with me on that one? So we have different sound banks, and well, let me touch on that for a second. It would be silly to load all of the sound effects for the big boss on level 10 when we're still on level 3. This would be a misuse of resources. But then the flip side, there's certain sound effects that we're going to hear in every level. Footsteps, pain, weapons, and different things like this. So the way that you can break this up for yourself, granularize your sound banks, I come over here in the Wwise and F7, well now you see that I have a ton of sound banks. And I could load and unload as I switch between the scenes, managing what is loaded into RAM at any given time. So I have the start scene, and that's just for start. And you'll see that I have that never unload, because all that's going to do is start the music. And I want to keep the music through all the different levels. And then once we get to the very first level, it will load Zone 1 and SE Main. SE Main has our footsteps, our weapons, and all of the different melees and everything that we would hear in every level. But it'll also load Zone 1. And as we progress through the game, next level, it'll dump Zone 1 and load Zone 2, but we'll always have our main and our start music. So let's, go ahead.
I just noticed that inside Unity, I don't really see the SE Main.
Because I haven't added it for you guys yet.
Oh.
And I'm going to show you the process all the way through. So I just wanted to show you the sound banks here. And so what we need first is the start sound bank. So in this very first area, I can add it to this Wwise global object. I'm going to add a component, and as simple as AK bank. And now I'll come over here, drop down, and I want this bank to load on start. Actually, we have different options as far as triggering. I don't want that to load on start. I want that to load on awake when it's actually initializing that level. I don't want it to start and then have sounds come in. So we could also mix these load on triggers, and all I want is awake. So I'm going to have to deselect start so it's not mixed. Then this one here, unload on destroy. I don't want this one to ever unload. So I'm going to say unload on nothing. And then here is where my events are. Let me show you in the Wwise Picker. We can see all the events that I've added to the game, as well as their sound banks and states and everything that I just showed you is in here. I can click on this switch, and here's all the banks that I would want to load. So this one is just start. I'm going to double click, and now it'll load that bank. So let's see what happens. We hit play. Nothing. Nothing at all. How come?
There's no hook.
Well, there's no event.
I mean, there's no event.
Yeah, there's no event. Nothing's telling the music to play. We loaded all the information. It's loaded, but we haven't set up a trigger for it to play. Now, as simple as add component AK event. In here somewhere, I swear. There it is. And I want this one just to load on start. And we'll come down here, and this is not a sound bank, so I don't have the option to load or unload. It's just going to trigger when I tell it to, so I'm going to trigger this on start. And what I want to trigger is in environments. I don't know, is it UI? Yeah. And there's the Explore music. Double click, it's there. Let's see what happens next. It's that damn simple. And it empowers it empowers the sound designers and the composers to actually do everything themselves. Now, this is a very simple situation. So let's go ahead and start. And now because I unloaded on nothing, so now I say, and I added a listener to this scene as well. And now we still have our music. So, what might we hear in this scene? Ambience. Good. Do you see any other kind of actions that are happening that we might add a sound to?
Jet or her breath.
Jet. Yeah. So right under her spaceship, the spaceship steam. Okay. So let's do that. So we'll come over here, turn that off. Now, let me get to the second scene, which is Zone 1. And yes, I do want to save that, because I deleted it for the presentation. So we'll save that as we look. Now then, it's going to be the same stuff. So now this scene, guess what? It has a Wwise global game object. And I didn't delete any of these. So even though we didn't hear anything, it loaded the SE main. That's the main. That has the footsteps and the swings and the lasers and everything that we're going to hear on every level. So it did load that. I had nothing triggered. And then we also loaded zone 1. Notice unload on destroy. So when I go to zone 2, it's going to unload zone 1 out of memory, managing our RAM and what we're loading into the game at any given time. Okay, and then also, I'm sorry, I should have collapsed it. The SE main unload on nothing. So we'll have the footsteps and the melees and the lasers on every level. Excellent. Moving on. So it would be as simple, and I'll talk about the state. I'll talk about this trigger in a minute. So now it would be as simple as add component. Let's find an event. AK event. We're going to trigger this on start, and what we want to hear now is surface ambience. Excellent. Cool. Let's see what we got. Not really hearing anything, huh?
Yeah.
There's the surface ambience because the bank's loaded, but what happened? What are we missing?
Music.
And the reason why is because that's only loading on the very first scene. And I tell it to not unload ever. So during development, we'll put all the banks, we'll have all the banks loaded on every single scene. So we don't have to run through the entire game to see if this one trigger is working. We can just go to that scene and launch it and everything's loaded. So let's get back to, let's get back to start. Absolutely safe. Hit play. We have our music. And we have our ambiences as well. Cool. How's everybody doing? Is this making sense? Pretty straightforward, right? So now, but I've only added sound effects to just that Wwise global object. So now we all agree there's this steam, this smoke down here. I can attach a sound to just about anything I can get my damn hands on in this session. So let's go ahead and stop this. Let's get to our zone 2 so we can work. I'm going to scroll over here in the hierarchy. And the 301 will explain the hierarchy, the inspector, the project, and so on. It goes through these different views and Wwise and gives you an entry-level understanding of what to do. Okay, so now, let's come over here. I think it's in foreground, I think. There we go. There's the drop ship. Cool. And there's the smoke. There it is right there. And as you can see, I've already placed an AK game object. Let me do this. I'm going to remove the object. Let's go ahead and remove this component. And so I can show you that anytime you add an event or like an ambient to an object, it'll also create that AK game object. That has to be there in order for the sound engine to understand it's an audio object. So we'll go to add component. Now, what I want to do this time is I could very easily just do AK event. But this time, I wanted to show you attenuation spheres. And so what I'm going to go to is AK ambient. Now, when I pull AK ambient up, I want to stress the fact, so we can trigger this on start. That's cool. And all of this stuff up here is the same as the AK event. But the different part is right here. So with AK ambient, we have different positioning modes and different things that happen. So in this state right now, without changing anything, it's exactly the same as an event, except for I can show my attenuation sphere. And I can see how the sound is moving through. So let's go ahead and attach an event to the smoke. It'll play on start. I'm going to go to environment, and I should have spaceship steam. Cool. All right. And let's go ahead and let's get back to start. We're going to save our work. We're going to hit play. We'll have our music. Now we've seen. But better, We have spatialization. Well, I shouldn't say spatialization. It's not a 3D game. But we have attenuation and panning. So can you tell? Oops, wasn't supposed to do that yet. Do you hear the steam panning? And then, after certain units away, distance is based in units, after certain units away, it will attenuate. So let me show you that attenuation sphere and how we can manipulate that to adjust how far across the map this sound would be heard. So what I'm going to do is get back over to zone 1. We're going to get back to our spaceship, dropship, and this one. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show attenuation sphere. On current event only. Did you see it light up, you guys? And now when I back up, do you see the attenuation sphere? So I'm going to hear logarithmically, or however I set up the attenuation within the game, I will hear that steam all the way up to right there, right when I get to that second information post. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Now check this out. This is really important. You're not going to get these attenuation spheres unless in Wwise you get to your project settings. You know what? I shouldn't have done a quick key. Project settings are in project, drop down, project settings. And over in sound banks, right here, you guys, max attenuation. So that would need to be checked. So when you generate to the game, it's sending that attenuation metadata to Unity so it can set up that sphere for you so you can see it. Does this make sense? Excellent. Moving on. Back to 5, designer, back to Unity, cool. And so, you know, let me show you this actually. We see the attenuation sphere. Let me mod it real quick. Let's come over to environment. Let's go over to ship steam. There's our sound effect. We can go over to, now that it's selected, it's within the property editor, go to positioning. Here is the custom attenuation that I set up. And we can see that it is 25 units away. So what I'm going to do is let's just set that to 15. And I'm going to hit return. I'm going to generate that to the game. Let's do it the right way. Go to the sound banks. Let's generate. I was going to do the quickie. Generate all. Close. And now you'll see that that attenuation sphere is much smaller. So every time you make a change, you generate, and you'll see the changes. Well, the adjustments that you've made, they'll show up in Unity. Does this make sense? How are we doing, you guys? Do you feel like we're learning something?
Yes.
Excellent questions, yes?
Is the panning for the objects in 2D or 3D game defined? It's in 3D game defined.
Say again, sir, I'm
The
sorry.
panning of the sound is in 3D game defined. Or it's in 2D because the game is 3D.
Oh, I see what you're saying. In positioning, it's still set up as 3D game.
Yeah, that's what I
It's
thought.
still set up like that.
Okay.
Now, even though it's not a 3D map where we could run in circles, it still would be considered 3D. Now, the music, you guys, I set that up as 2D. So, are you with me? Or, well, let me rephrase that. Audio Connect, they took that out. It used to be a 2D or 3D option. The way that we select 2D now is we just turn off 3D. Does that make sense? And so I've turned off spatialization, and now my ambiences will just be in stereo, and as I run through the map, they won't be affected. My music will be in stereo, however, and as I run through the map, it won't be affected. Excellent, please.
That option, position type, simple mode, or what?
Oh, man, that's
Okay.
next. That's some goodies. So, that's the power of AKA. Can you guys tell I hate talking about this stuff? So that's really the power of the AK ambient. The reason why I used the AK ambient here is just to show you the attenuation sphere. I could have just used a regular event and then just adjusted it by ear, but now I could actually see that in the map. Does that make sense? And have a visual reference. That is the only reason why I used AK Ambient on that one sound. Now the power of AK Ambient, well here, let me go through, before we get to that, let me go through a couple more things. No, because it's really important and it's one of the topics. But let me move through the game and add a few more sounds or show you how it was done, and then we'll get that. That's on the next level. All right, so we have that set up. And that's cool. And so now we can turn this off. Don't show me. That's gone. Let's save our work. Cool. All right. So now the next thing, I've been explaining that we can attach the sounds to the game object that's created during the integration. We can go in and find any kind of object within the game and attach sounds to. So let's do this. The next thing I want to show you is now adding events to animations. This is really, really important. This is the way that I was able to add the majority of the sounds to this game by way of animation events. So if we hit start, and you guys already heard the footsteps, I already heard it from my controller here. And we'll talk about,
Shoot, shouldn't have been thinking the doorknob.
we'll talk about that stuff as well. But so what's happening is it's not the collision of this object touching this object, it's just the animation. When she gets into a certain position, that's when the sound is triggered to play. So, also, watch this, you guys listen. You hear the landing? I added the landing to the puff song. Literally, that's what that sound is attached to. So again, I'm telling you, anything that any kind of hook, anything that you can get your hands on that's triggered within the game, you can attach a sound to. So let me show you how I did the poof and the footsteps. So now something that the 301 certification teaches you is when you're doing this. Okay, so and I kind of learned this the hard way. Is I could go to Ellen in this level and I could add something to her. But then when I go to the next level, it's not there. So when you're doing this type of thing, what you want to work on, you guys, is go to your prefab. The prefab is going to be in every single level. And if you attach sounds and scripts and whatnot to the prefab, it'll show up in every scene that you go through. Does this make sense? Cool. All right. So with this one prefab selected, I'm going to pull up the animation editor. Let's get into the different animations, and I'm looking for run. There it is. Okay, and then I can hit play. And there's her run. And note it, well, that's kind of hard to see, isn't it, Dave? So we'll stop this. We'll stop the animation, and I'll just do it manually. So I timed out right when her foot hits the ground, I added in an animation event. And that one is find surface, and then this one is play footstep. So every time she enters that point, it's going to trigger an event. Wise. It's brilliant. Please.
What are the two light bulbs that's on the pattern? Two light bulbs.
Oh, that's just lighting. That's just different lighting and different sounds. Here's something to know that if you guys wanted to play with this, oh, I don't have anything here. So there are a few objects, if you wanted to try this, there's a few objects that have like audio components. And even though we're not using that audio, if you delete that component, it's attached to a different trigger or a different function, and it crashes the game. So there's a few audio objects that are Unity that you would actually have to leave in there. Does that make sense? Please.
So what you just did, would that be similar to like the keyframe, like with like motion graphics and stuff?
Well, let me show you the rest of it now. So we set up this, what is called a function, play footstep. Now this is where we're actually going to get into a little bit of scripting. Obviously, I have down here, I have add component, but I'm going to need something a little bit more for this situation. So what I did is I went to add component, go all the way to the bottom, click on new script, and it'll create a script. If you're doing this, I highly recommend that you really have a good thought process on how you're naming things and your structure and have a little bit of forethought, because once you make a script in Unity, it is a nightmare to try to change the name. It's literally easier to delete it and just remake it. So if you're making scripts, be very careful when you're naming and have a little forethought. So I'm going to double click here on the Ellen Footstep script. This will open Visual Studio, and the 301 certification will teach you guys how to do these very basic scripts. Please understand, I am not a coder. I am not a coder, you guys. But I feel that I now understand the basics and I can teach this to my students. And this is at the very least, this is like the minimal amount of knowledge you need for coding to acquire these jobs, to be completely self-sufficient and not need the coders. So what we have is, up here we have our, oh gosh, see, and I've already forgot the name of those. Those are namespaces. I'm so sorry. Up here is our namespaces. And then, and this is the just collection of different types of scripts that will work. Here's the class, and our class is mono behavior. And then the simplest way to explain mono behavior without being a coder is it's basically a container of parameters and functions that we have access to in Unity. Then we create the script, we name it, and it automatically would show up public class Ellen Footsteps, that's the name of the script, and mono behavior is our class. Then I started scripting. I added an access modifier named public, so anybody who's in the in Unity can have access to the script to manipulate. It's the Wwise engine event, and then the event is Ellen run. So that's basically just setting up. It's public, it's going to be an event, and that's the name of the event. If I came over here just so you can see, if I went to here, if let's say I hit S, now because of the integration, now Visual Studio also understands all of the AK states, all the AK classes. So it could have been an audio kinetic state, a switch, a trigger, an RTPC, it could have been a callback, an event, whatever we wanted. So that's going to be event. And now you start typing, it's like, oh, this might be what you need. Double click there, drops it in. Next, anytime you see any line in code that has the // this is just a comment and it will be overlooked by the computer. This is just, as you're scripting, coders will put in comments to keep themselves organized. The next thing is public void, then play footsteps. So void is basically a call. Access modifier public to call the function play footstep. When play footstep is triggered, then Ellen run event will post on the game object it's attached to. Woo! How are we doing, guys? Is anybody a coder in the room?
Well, yeah, the void is a return type, and there's a little bit, yeah.
A little bit. So did that make sense to you guys?
C#.
C#, absolutely, very similar to JavaScript as well. So did that make sense, being a coder? At least for somebody who isn't a coder.
Yeah.
Good deal. Because that's really what I want to do right now, is just make sense so you guys can get into the lessons and do this yourself. Okay, and again, the 301 teaches you all about this stuff. So now, what I would do is I go into the animation, I create the audio, import it, I make the event, I put the event into the sound bank, in the correct sound bank, and I generate. Now I come over to my animation, I right click to make an animation event. And we would come over here, and here are all the functions. And when you add that function in the script, that function will show up. That function will show up in Unity, so now you can attach that to different animation objects. And there is the play footstep. You guys with me? Pretty cool. All right. Now then, let's see what time we're at. Okay, we got some time. So the next thing I wanted to show you guys is, get back to our project, let's get back to our scenes. Cool. Zone 1, that's good. We got our footsteps. Oh, the poof, that's what I wanted to show you guys. So again, and I'm just showing you, I know we didn't load the first bank, but the footsteps are there. Oh.
Hello, is it number one? Je ne know. Is it the
Does anybody know what language this is?
Je ne
I thought it was French. I couldn't find out it is not French. This is the language that came with the game, you guys. So the cool thing is that that actually gives you an opportunity to work with languages. Now, we might name the language in the session incorrectly because I named it French and it's not French, but that would still give us an opportunity to work with different languages within the session. Okay, and I wanted to show you again that land sound is attached to the proof of dust. So I'm going to show you how we did that now. Very simple, so easy, any hook or action that you can get your hands on. So this one is going to be in a different spot though, and that's something that you would also have to learn. You're going to have to kind of dig through the session to see what you can find. So I thought this was in prefabs and I couldn't find it. I'm like, oh, wait a minute, that's a video effect. And I expanded this out. I was like, okay, so that's going to be Ellen. I clicked on Ellen and look at that, jump, puff. And there is the video effect. I double click on the video effect. Hey guys, look at that. Click on the AK add component, added an AK event, and then I use the trigger on enable. So when that proof is enabled, it plays the sound effect.
It's cheating. It's too easy.
It's almost too easy. Now, like I said in the beginning, if this were a AAA title with AAA budgets, things would not happen like this. There would definitely be more communication and the way that coders design things, it's like, no, you can put that script right inside of here and it would work perfect or whatnot. But this is a situation where the game's done and somebody's come to you to integrate audio into this game. Then you're not a coder. Guess what? You could have all the audio. And I don't think it's cheating. I think it's brilliant. Actually.
I didn't mean it was cheating. It's remarkable.
I'm with you. It is remarkable, and that's why I'm kind of pumped up on this stuff, and it's really cool. All right, so I will, let's talk about those attenuation spheres and the different positioning modes that you asked about. So over in, let's get back to our scenes. And in zone 3, Ellen, there's an area here where there's these pools of acid that are bubbling. And in a normal situation, if I just added one event with an attenuation, do you think a circle is going to represent that object very well? Oh, it's going to be horrible. Or even more important, let's say it's a 3D game. And in the WAG game, there's an area where you're in the library and it's kind of an open floor and there's lava under the floor. And this is a pool of lava that is a weird shape. And so one sphere is not going to represent that object within the game. And it would really sound weird. You're right next to it. This one section, you don't hear any lava at all. And then you're in this one section, and it's really loud. And so this is a way to kind of balance that out. So what I did over here, again, you can attach it to any object. So we have acid. Here's the pool of acid. And then I attached it to the bubbles, you guys. And then you can see that I have these different ambient points. So on the bubble game object, as simple as going to add component, and then added the AK ambience script. I had this trigger on start, so when the level starts, this will play. But the beautiful thing about the ambient is when I told you in simple mode, it's just like an event, but you have the advantage of the attenuation spheres. But now we have large mode and we have what is called multi-position mode. And what this will do for you is with one event, you can have multiple emitter points on one object. So I don't have to have a bunch of events triggered, then a bunch of different sounds triggered. It'd be one event, one sound trigger, but multiple emitter points within this object. And then I could kind of shape these emitter points according to the lava bed or make it fit the acid, the pool of acid here. So as you can see, let me move this up a little bit, and you can see those different points that I added in. And then again, a benefit of the ambient is we have the option to show our attenuation spheres. And so for current event only, and now you can really set up how you're going to hear that sound as I travel over that. that ambient, that object within the game. Does this make sense, you guys? Really cool. And it would be as simple as coming over here. I could, here, let's do this. Let's do this. So I believe I can come over here. Actually, did not want to do that. Cool. So I'm just going to add a position point. And there is the AK ambient there. I'm going to go to tools so I can move this around. Oh, no, here we go. And now I can, oh, it's grabbed all of them. Excuse me. That is because I am on the parent. And what I need to be on is just that one child. And so now I can position this ambient point wherever I want. Does this make sense? And you know what? If I turned off the attenuation sphere by deselecting it now, we could see how that would affect on the map. Brilliant. Love this stuff. All right. So any questions on that, you guys? Is that making sense? Does this seem like something that you could do? Yeah. Quite easily. Excellent. Very good. Okay, so let me see what else. So I have one more thing that I would like to show you, and then we can, I'll play the game for you. I'll let you hear all the different sound effects as we run through. I still want to show you switches, and I want to show you states, and then I want to show you one more animation. That was kind of tough for me to figure out, or one more sound effect that I couldn't figure out how to do it, so I just attached it to an animation. So, first thing is, let me close this down. Let's get back to start. And let's, no, I do not want to save that. All that stuff was there. Let's go back to start. Cool. Okay. Now in this Wwise Global, oh no, my bad, not on start, it's on the first real level. So if I go to Wwise Global, now I have this AK state. So again, within Wwise, within our game syncs, I created some switches. So I have footstep, hard and soft. I created a music switch container and didn't have time to get this integrated. We have Ellen Life, Alive, Dead, different game states. And then we have this one state that I'm going over right now, which is inside or outside of the cave, inside or outside. So we made these game syncs, generated. They show up in the Wwise Picker. And so to make sure everything's there, so you can see we have our states. There's different states. There's the inside of the cave, outside the cave. And so it's as simple as, I could attach a state to, like, let's say an object within the game, but this is very easy. The whole level is either outside or it's inside. So in the cave, so we're down on the global, Wwise Global Object. For each level, I just told Unity, are we inside or are we outside? So this one here, it starts, we're on outside, and then if we come over to zone 4, this is when we're actually inside the cave, and if you see, if we go to the Wwise Global here, now it's AK state, and then now we're inside, and it's very simple. So that one simple on-off type of switch is controlling reverb in Wwise. And it's game sync. And so that's how that one is triggered. And I'll demo that in just a second for you guys. And then in zone 2, to give you an example of switches. And I was explaining to Simon, this one stumped me. And so the WAG is in 3D. There are different things that are happening in 2D games. So, you know, we have colliders and different things like this. Well, when it's 2D, there's colliders, but they're on separate levels. Are you guys with me? Different layers, excuse me. And so I didn't realize that at first because I'm still learning Unity. And so as soon as I got the layers figured out, I was able to create these colliders. So I made an empty game object called Wwise Hard Surface. I made a 2D collider box within the session. So anytime Ellen is within this box right here, you guys, it will switch. And this one is a custom script that I had my guy help me with, but that will switch from soft surface to hard surface. So I only have one trigger. Let me go back over to Wise for a second and show you the footsteps. So if I come over to Ellen and if I go to locomotion, we can see there's the footstep switches. If I select this and get to general settings, we can see that it's the switch group foot. If I go to the event, it's telling this switch to play, but the default is the soft material. So the only time I need that switch to react is when I'm on that hard surface. Does that make sense? So that's the only time that the switch is really being used. Other than that, it's just playing the default soft. Excellent. Yes, please.
So you actually created the box just to make things easier, right? Because technically you will assign the hard surface as where you.
Yes, and if you remember in those functions, there was if you remember the animation event,
Yeah.
there was an event in there that was find surface, and that was attached to a huge piece of code that I didn't know how to get into. So I found a workaround. And the 301 certification shows you it's so easy to create these boxes and these different colliders in a 2D or a 3D situation.
Are those so does those like hard surface or soft surface do they originally contain 2D?
In the original game, in that original script, Ellen has an animation event that is find surface. So every time she steps on her object is touching a different object, and there's a script to figure out what surface it's on. And the point that I was trying to say is I couldn't manipulate that script because I'm not a coder.
I see. But then, so in this case, if you look in the vertical, she might be in the air. But then stepping like that would be the hard surface here. Now she's actually.
Right, you are exactly right. So if I had Ellen running in the air right here, it would be hard surface.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I could have. I also found a way to where instead of a box, it's just a line, and I could have put just a line across the object as well. So there's tons of different options, and the more that you dig into this, you realize the different options that you have, and you're able to manipulate the software better. And does that make sense? Excellent. So this is the only hard surface here, and then we have one more hard surface when she's doing the boss battle, and that would be the switches. So, and also the 301 cert will teach you how to make all of these box colliders, and not just a collider for switch, but a collider for ambience in a 3D environment. Right? Let's say I'm in the forest and there's forest ambience, but then I go into a little shed in the forest. Well, I could create a 3D box collider, so anytime this object is inside of this object, it's going to play a different ambient. And now I have the indoor ambience, so it teaches you all about that. And again, it took me about a couple weeks to get through it, so we're just kind of skimming the surface of what this teaches you. And there's so much more, you guys. There's so much more. So, let's go through and let's get to our main scene. There we go. And here. And then we should have pretty much the entire game now.
The leader.
You know what? Let me tell you one more thing because I do have a little bit of time. This was not me. This was Dante. He's my coder. So I'm a game developer. I have I have a few titles out, but usually Dante is handling all of the Unity engine and the code, and I'm handling all the sound effects and Wwise and integration and so on. So he showed me a really cool trick that I just thought it was brilliant, and this is just getting used to the software. So I explained to you that when we're doing this, we want to attach these scripts and these different sound effects. We want to attach it to the prefab, right? So, but check this out. Here's a prefab. Here's the same prefab in the same level. I want this prefab to trigger one language dialogue, but I want this prefab to trigger different dialogue. So what we did is we actually went into prefabs and we went into our interactables. And here is the info post. And you can see that we manipulated this in, yeah, we definitely did some manipulation on this. Dante helped me out with this one. But basically, you guys, what we did is we set up scripting and events. So this is the prefab, and this is what we did on the prefab, Wise Dialog Controller, and there's the start event and the end event, but we didn't add any events into the prefab, or that would have showed up on every single instance of that in the game. So we just set up the controller on the prefab, but then in the actual level itself, we went to that specific prefab in that level, and now I put in post 1 start and stop, and then if I come over here to the second information, it's post 2 start and stop. Does that make sense, you guys? So that's a way to kind of have individuality between the different objects that you have something on the individual prefab. Whew, did that make sense? Is everybody with me? Excellent. And so now, you guys, I'll just demo the game for you and show you, like I told Simon, the proof is in the pudding, you know? It's one thing to be in a controlled environment and going through a certification that takes you by the hand and walks you down the path and teaches you stuff. But I was like, okay, so good, I got through this, I passed, everything's cool, very stoked. Can I do it for real? And that's why I found the 2D Space Explorer in the Asset Store and tried to do all of the integration just with what I learned in 301. And we can pull it off. And so this is what I came up with. There's still a few things that I want to get done, but I'm now going to use this in our advanced game classes at the conservatory.
Allora, fece la mandaca, ce ne vanno sciù, ce ne pendenti da donna.
Dialogue. Okay, so here's the switch right here. So if I could run in the air as soon as she's off the platform. So now you hear the hard surface. Added an event is on destroy on that one. So when it's picked up, when it's destroyed out loud, it'll trigger the sound. Literally just attached an event to these different objects. And then if I were to turn on the attenuation sphere, you'd see that attenuation sphere moving as she moves as well. Here are the pools of acid.
That just beat the ball up. I see you fit that it on.
And now there's the same thing that I did with running and so on. Now she has a melee, and she swings and added that to the animation of that object being destroyed. That's a little health pickup. I haven't been hurt yet, but I'll go over here to these little bad guys, and I'll let them take a bite out of me. Okay, so now we're going to get into the cave, and you'll hear the AK state. Hard surface. Soft surface. Now we're inside the cave, so now when this scene started, it did the AK state, and now it's happening in the also. Oh, I haven't died. All that's to the animation. There's a hurt and then a death animation. So you saw the creatures were taking bites, and that was just the hurt animation. That she gets hurt, and then she dies in the pool, and that's all that's on the animations. This one was kind of tough for me, and I couldn't figure out how to create the sound of that sliding. And I couldn't find it as far as the code. So what I did is I attached the sound effect to because I couldn't find anything else to add it to. And so, so this would definitely, there's some things that are kind of, I don't know, hacky, let's say, but still, it gets the job done. And if I did have some support from a coder, then I could figure that out very quickly. Let's try that again. Go down, buddy. I don't know how to play video games, you guys. I'm not a gamer. I am a gamer. What's happening? There's a weird. I hooked up the controller to the game. The game is normally a keyboard type game, and I switched it over to controller. So there's some weird things in the controls. And I think you guys get the gist of it. So we are at, look at that, perfect timing. So I want to thank you guys for coming in and checking out my talk. Thank you for your time. Now that we're done, does anybody have any questions? We can go through some stuff if you're interested.
Can you explain a little about the prefab again? Like the prefabs?
Yeah, it's something that the 301 teaches you. You know, before people start walking out, you guys, again, one more time, I want to let you know that all of this is available for you on Audio Kinetics website, the 101, 201, 251, 301, all the information, the assets, it's all up there for you. The only thing that would ever cost money is if you actually want the certification, and I think that's pretty fair.
How long does it take to go through the whole lot from 1 to 3?
Ooh. You're going to have to be committed.
I think the first exam is $100 or $195.
But in terms of time, if you were...
In terms of time, you get 2 attempts for, I think,
just going through the materials at a reasonable rate.
it's about an hour per lesson. I heard from other people.
It's like 1 hour per, I guess for the first 101 and the 201 and 251 is basically 1 hour per lesson, but for 301 probably 2 hours or
2 hours per lesson, yeah.
Depends on whether.
Well, and the reason why it took me a couple of weeks, you guys, again, in all fairness, I have 8 kids, I have a dev company, I teach full time, and so this is kind of at nighttime for a couple hours, you know, to get through it, but it's definitely something that's simple.
Simulation time as well. When if this is
Yeah, 2 by 2.
Right.
you have to stay off as much time again, probably just processing and
And you know what, even for my students, the first time they're going through the certification stuff, they go through the lessons, and I make sure that they go through the lessons several times. Well, maybe not several, but multiple times, and I won't even allow them to attempt the certification unless they get it perfect on every lesson. Where they have it on the back of their hand. And then the certification, only half of those questions are on the cert, so you really need to know the software. It's not a memorization type thing, it's your learning. Sure.
I got you.
Excellent. Thanks again, you guys.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Bodie.
It's really good.
I think it is.
You're welcome.
Pretty nice.
A little better this time, huh?
Much better.
No. The first time going through, we just didn't have a flow yet. It's the first time I've given the talk, so
Oh, I
just
see,
trying to,
I get
feel
it.
things
I
out.
get it, I get it.
So I came up with a better plan.
Today was the first time? Oh, you did it yesterday?
Yes. Say again, sir?
You did it yesterday?
Yeah, I did it yesterday, and it's a good thing you didn't come because you wouldn't have come today. And today was much better. I promise, guys.
I had a question about, I mean, this is the course, at its core, this is, what about moving into fully specialized engagement with VR?